Welcome back to the Hoeflinger podcast. I'm here tonight with my mom, a very special guest. My dad actually, he got called. He's on call right now, so he got called into the hospital, so he couldn't join us. But tonight, we're talking with my mom, Dr. Cindy Hoeflinger. She's a retired forensic pathologist. She's got her MD and her PhD, so she's got my dad, Dr. Hoeflinger, beat out with the PhD. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Episode number 2.
Yeah, exciting.
So I just wanted to, I got lots of different questions, and you can talk about whatever you want as well, but let's kick it off.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so tell people a little bit about just the start of who you are, what you did, kind of just give an overview of what a forensic pathologist is and anything else you want to kind of detail for people.
Well, I graduated from high school in 1979, and I was a little country girl, and my mom and dad hadn't gone to college. My dad didn't even finish high school, and we didn't know about all the different careers that were out there, and didn't have as many choices, and women were really starting to become, I guess, emancipated back then or whatnot. So I was gonna do like chemical engineering or something with chemistry or math, because I loved math and chemistry. And after a short while, I realized there wasn't much I was going to do with math, because I didn't really want to go on and take all that theoretical math. So I don't know. I was talking to my mom, and I had thought about becoming a nurse. Okay. And I was talking to my mom, and I said, I can remember standing in the kitchen in our little farmhouse out in the country, and I said, I don't know, Mom. I think I want to become a doctor. Why should I stop and not try to go all the way? So that's how it kind of started.
This was between high school and college, or
well, like my first semester in college.
The first semester in college. Yeah. So you just thought about like, why not? Because obviously it was a lot different back then. It still is. Women in medicine, it's definitely still a male-dominated industry. So that was a pretty probably scary step, saying I want to actually be a full doctor.
I had parents that told me I could do whatever I wanted. And even though they were very traditional, and my dad was a truck driver, he was an over-the-road truck driver. My dad used to always tell me that there wasn't anything that I couldn't do if I set my mind to it. Yeah. And that did help a lot with confidence and stuff. And I did really, really well in school. And I just decided I was going to go for it, and switched my majors. And I went to a very small liberal arts college that used to be an all-girls school for, it's Catholic, but it was an all-girls school initially. It was Siena Heights College. Yeah. It's become Siena Heights University now in Adrian, Michigan. And like, for instance, my organic chemistry class had 3 people in it, and I was one of them. Yeah. So that was really stressful, but it was also, what an experience to be able to have just 3 of you. You got a lot of one-on-one attention.
Definitely.
Every day we'd have to do a problem on the board, so there was no...
that had to be a little nerve-wracking.
Yes.
Up at the point.
Very nerve-wracking. And my teacher was my advisor, and one of the people I really, really looked up to, Sister Sharon. She had her PhD in physics from Michigan, University of Michigan. Wow. So you can imagine how smart she was. So yeah, it was fun.
Before that, because obviously you always did pretty well in school, we'll joke, but you graduated valedictorian or...
I graduated valedictorian, but number 1 in my class.
Yeah.
From Blissfield High School.
Blissfield High School. And you had you had a track record too.
I still have track records.
We saw, you had, what was it, the relay one that was still up? We saw.
We went to states my freshman year, and I went for the 100-yard dash. I'm trying to remember. I think it was the 100. It was we were switching over to meters in the middle of all that.
Oh,
so
yeah, okay.
It might have been the 100-meter dash. I don't know, but it was the 100, and the 440 relay and the 880 relay. Yeah. So it was either the 400 meter or the 800, or
Someone was telling you that was just like a year ago or something, though, that your record's still up inside the high school. So that's pretty cool.
Well, and at first I thought it was yards and it would always be up, but it's in meters.
That's great.
So, so there has been no. It's the 800, and that was not my better event. The 220 or the 200. I wasn't as fast. I was better at the shorter distances. So I was the slowest one on the 800. But we placed seventh. So
Yeah.
but it's school record, so that was pretty
But
cool.
yeah, so you obviously were pretty athletic, very athletic. You were doing very well in school, and then you went to Siena Heights for
Yes.
one semester or 2 semesters.
Oh no, when I made that decision, I was in my first semester.
Okay.
I ended up graduating from there.
Okay. Oh,
Yeah.
you went to University of Toledo for one semester before
I started
switching.
at University
Okay,
of
sorry, I
Toledo.
got them mixed up. Okay.
I don't know why, but a bunch of us went from my school. We were in Michigan, and then that year they opened up reciprocity, where they offered in-state tuition, and there was like 10 of us, so it was kind of fun. A lot of my friends were there too, but I hated it. It was just so big. And for me, I mean, back then there were like 22,000 students at UT, University of Toledo, and it's much smaller now. But I just found that overwhelming as a little country girl,
Definitely, probably a big shock to go to not being used to so many people.
Yeah.
What a transition then to go to Siena Heights and have a class with 3 people.
Well, yeah, that was my third year, but still, yeah. Even my lower level classes might have had 25, 30. Mm-hmm. That would be my chemistry class, 25 to 30 people.
Yeah. And then
it's pretty small.
So while you're at Siena Heights, how did you work in the lab then when you and Dad met?
That was grad school.
That was grad school. Okay, yeah. So you graduated from Siena Heights, then you went to University of Toledo.
Here's a little unique thing.
Okay.
So when I was trying to decide what to do, it was really, really hard, and I imagine it still is. It goes up and down, but it was really hard to get into med school back then. And we only had like 3 med schools in Michigan, and there was like 7 in Ohio. So obviously, if you were an Ohio resident, that upped your chances a little bit, maybe. But we had this guy on our board at Siena that was head of the graduate school at the Medical College of Ohio in Toledo, which is now affiliated. Now it's University of Toledo Medical. But he was head of the graduate program, the whole graduate school, and then he was head of the anatomy department. So I went and talked to him. His name was Dr. Liberato De Dio. And he said to me, "Why would you want to go to med school? Why don't you go to graduate school and you can, do research and get your PhD, and you have research opportunities." So since I didn't get into medical school from Michigan, and actually I don't even remember if I took the MCAT then. Maybe I just decided I was going to go to grad school because it was intriguing to me and I loved learning. So I ended up getting my PhD from getting into grad school and getting my PhD from MCO. That's what we used to call it.
And that's when you and Dad met.
I'm trying to think. So we met in between. After I graduated, I was working in the EM lab then, not doing research, but I had a summer job in the EM lab, the electron microscopy lab. And actually that was between first and second years. So I started medical school then. Long story short, I just I still wanted to go to medical school. So after as I was getting my PhD toward the end of it, I decided to pursue it. I was at that point then an Ohio resident.
Gotcha.
And I applied to medical school and got accepted. So I was finishing up my dissertation and working on that my first semester in med school. And then I did my first year and I worked in the EM lab that first summer. And your dad was doing research that summer on trigeminal neuralgia, and he happened to work in the EM lab too.
Yeah.
And we met that summer.
Because you are 3 years older than Dad.
Yes, I am. But
you guys were already older at that point.
Yeah.
But that was probably a very busy time then. So you were finishing. I didn't realize that you were finishing your PhD kind of, and you still
and started medical school.
Yeah, and starting medical.
Which I had already taken my first year of graduate school. I had to take anatomy. I had to take physics. Everything was pure.
Yeah.
Now it's integrated and it's system based more. Like you'll do cardiovascular system, I believe.
Yeah.
But we did all anatomy, a year of physiology, behavior. I didn't do behavioral science. That was a medical school class. And there was another class for first year, biochemistry. Yeah. So I did all those classes with the medical students. And then my second year, or yeah, I'm sorry, I got a little confused there. I had already done those as a graduate student.
Yeah,
Yeah.
gotcha.
So then I met him that summer. We did not meet that whole school year.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you think that is?
You both were so busy.
No, there was about 150 kids in the class, and your dad sat in the third row,
Uh-huh.
and your mother sat in the back.
Oh, you sat in the back? Wow.
I sat in the back.
So I guess I'm more like dad in that regard. I
Yes.
sat in the front for a lot of my classes.
Yeah.
Less distract. Well, at Ohio State, there's just so many
People.
Yeah, everyone's got their laptops open, and there'll be people like shopping on Facebook or playing
God.
games. Yeah, no, it's so distracting.
Yeah, I can't imagine having that. But there were two reasons why I sat in the back. I'm always late,
Mm-hmm.
and I talk.
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
so you can't talk in the third row.
Yeah.
And everybody would stare at you if you were late, so you got to always be on time.
Okay, so you guys met. You were finishing up medical school, and let's fast forward a little bit to
Got
then
engaged at the end of the medical school.
Well, but yeah, and just like Dad was describing, you kind of laid it out for him. If you guys were going to do the residency program match, since you were both trying to do get into residency programs, you can do like a couples match. But you're like, if I'm going to move across the country or whatnot, or move, we're going to get engaged or married.
I said I was very independent.
Yeah.
And very much a strong-willed woman and very outspoken.
Yeah, yeah.
And I said that I wouldn't be following him anywhere without a ring.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I said engaged or married, but I think it was married.
Yeah, but that's a good thing too, I think, to stand up for yourself a little bit of, you got to keep your interests. You can't just let go of all those dreams you put in many years.
I would never at that time in my life, at that young of an age, after pursuing my dreams at that point, would never have followed somebody without making sure it was the best thing for me too.
Yeah, and I think that's
and our match actually wasn't a couples match because neurosurgery had their own match and it was early. It was a month before the others, so I was applying so we got to step back a little bit too.
Yeah.
So he ended up getting this. He won't tell you this, but it was prestigious. He got a research grant through the Howard Hughes Research Institute. And there were only 25 of those given out in the country. And he got several papers out of that year of research. That was our first year of marriage. And to enhance his chances also to get into a residency program. And since there wasn't anything in Toledo, obviously we were going to have to move away.
Yeah.
So he did his match, and then I would try to interview as a second year resident, which sometimes you couldn't do because, like Michigan, for instance, they take 5. At that point they had taken 5 residents a year for 5 years. That people never dropped out of their program, so there was never an opening. Mm-hmm. And then I said, well, okay, then I'll interview as a first year. So then I got an interview, but I pretty much interviewed wherever he was getting interviews set up.
Okay. So that's actually a little different than I think how he described it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But okay. So, and that just happened to work out then. So you were able to get so you guys moved to Rochester, New York, where.
Yeah. That was nerve wracking though. I mean, we're interviewing in Seattle, Washington, Baltimore, Maryland, Ann Arbor, Michigan. Thinking about these, we were pretty much very home oriented and family oriented and thinking about leaving. That was a big, big deal for us back then.
Yeah. I mean, definitely come from a small town and growing up your entire life in this area.
Yeah.
So that probably was. And then you get there, and how long was it before you first had Brian?
Okay. So while he did that research fellowship year, I started my residency in Toledo. Mm-hmm. So that was very easy because they knew me and they knew I would be going away, but they, offered me a position, which was really nice. So I was doing my first year of residency in a combined anatomical and clinical pathology residency. So I did a little bit of anatomical, which we can talk about at some point, and a little bit of clinical. And then he was doing his research. And we matched in Rochester, which was kind of, it's
just
not
a cut in here too. Our dogs are down here and the cats, and if you hear some background noise, that's Delilah spazzing out in the background.
They can't stand to be separated from me.
Yeah, they follow around.
Yeah, they follow me all around, and she snuck in because the cat got in. But
sorry to cut you off.
Yeah, no problem. I forgot what I was saying. Something about Rochester.
So you
Rochester was
So the clinical and then
anatomical.
Yeah, so you split between that.
Yeah, and so I started as a second year, and then he started as a first year. And Rochester was a little bit more of a feel, like a little bit more of a hometown, even though it was a big city and all, and it was much more white collar. Because I remember that being a description. It was more white collar, and Toledo's more blue collar. Because we have like the Jeep plant, and they had like some really big industries like Bausch and Lomb, the camera company. George, the camera guy.
Oh, Kodak?
Yeah, Kodak and some really, really big companies like that, and the University of Rochester Medical Center, which was huge. Great place to do our residency because the types of cases and stuff that we saw were incredible.
Yeah. Well, what was that? What was it like for you doing your pathology residency?
It's pretty cool. Because we had 25 or 30 residents in our program. It was a very international program. There were a lot of people that came from. We had some Chinese residents, a couple from Lebanon, Spanish, and really cool thing about my program, there were a lot of PhDs in my program who already had their PhDs. So I mean, you can imagine it was a really eclectic but very intelligent group. But it was really a family. It was really fun. We had a nice group of people, and Brian's, they only had like 7 residents, so we really became close to some of those people and the couples and stuff because that's your life, you know.
Yeah, when we were just in Seattle, I got to meet Paul.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, the first person Dad met in his orientation was Paul, and he was a urology resident, and he became a really good friend of ours.
Yeah, but it's funny seeing, even after they hadn't seen each other for a while, we were in Seattle, we saw him and just the banter they have together. Because I feel like in residency, when you're doing all that stuff too, people you're closest with, you don't have a ton of time for all this stuff. So the people you are close with,
you become close.
You become very tight-knit with.
Because I had a girlfriend whose husband was a ortho resident, and he was in his first year and Dad was in his first year, so that's their internship year, so they do general surgery and it's brutal. And he was always gone, and we both had chocolate lab puppies, and she also was going through she did in vitro fertilization, and she was super, super sick, and she wanted me to give her one of her shots, you know, to help the pregnancy until your hormones take over. And I couldn't do it. But I was lucky enough Dad happened to come home, so he gave her shot because her husband was never there. He was even busier than Dad, you know. It was crazy. But you know, you have these memories and this closeness. It's like a whole nother lifetime of the stuff we did.
When you guys talk about it, it was obviously a grueling time, but you look back at the fond memories.
Such fond memories. I had a really close friend, Camille Chouari, who's from Lebanon, and he's back in Lebanon, and we were just really close. Him, I, and Cheryl. She was from New York. It's fun times. And George from Greece.
Oh yeah.
I don't know. You met him.
I think I've talked. They were on a call, him and his wife.
Yep, and they live right outside of Pittsburgh. Or where did we do? Philadelphia. When we went to that meeting in Philadelphia, I got to see him. Yeah.
Cool. So then you started you guys started the family in Rochester. And what was that like? Because obviously it's already hard enough to start a family, but then you guys are both in residency. So that had to be kind of a crazy time.
It was really stressful, but I was very high energy and very, I'm very ADD. You already know this. ADHD. So I had so much energy, and I had Brian, and at that time I was supposed to only get 6 weeks. They didn't have the family leave and all that stuff.
Much different time.
Right. So you could get 8 weeks if you had a C-section, but I had him naturally, and man, that was so stressful. Trying to find the daycare, get him in daycare, and I wanted to transition a little bit. So luckily my doctor wrote me something, and I was able to get the 8 weeks. And then I used that last couple weeks to kind of transition over, because I didn't work 8-hour days. You know, yeah. I worked 11-hour days. So it was really hard to take your baby and leave him for that
I can't imagine. I mean, now a lot of places are giving you more like 10 to 12 weeks or up to 6 months. Some companies, that's becoming a competitive advantage for companies. So I can't imagine when you're working 11-hour plus days and you're only supposed to get 6 to 8 weeks. That seems like nothing. So
well, and I tried to arrange my schedule so I did an easier rotation. Like if you're doing surgical pathology, you're there from 6, 7 o'clock in the morning till 10, 11 o'clock at night, or longer, depending on what your load is that day. And I couldn't do that with a newborn,
Yeah.
So I did some electives and things that I could work 8 to 5.
So do you think you could walk us through like a typical day, or do you think you can remember any? I know it's a long time ago, but just what it was like.
So it was another lifetime ago. I can't imagine I did all this. So we lived literally, it was called the White Pants District because everybody that lived there were doctors and nurses and residents. And I literally was one street over from the hospital, and probably to get to the ER from, which I never went to, but Dad did, was probably, a 10-minute walk, or I mean, not even that, 5, literally, because it was 2 blocks. And then, I mean, it's a huge complex, but, getting to where I had to go would be a little bit longer. But once I had Brian, I had to, and our car was in a separate garage. It wasn't attached to the house. So that was interesting because I had him the end of December, and Rochester gets a lot of snow. And your dad would be out there, and he would be on call hours and hours and overnight. And he'd come home, and sometimes he'd go out at 4 o'clock in the morning before he'd go to work. And he'd shovel the driveway because this is after I had him, I guess, because I'd have to take him to daycare.
Yeah.
So I'd have to get the car, get him all in and take him to daycare, come back, park the car, and walk to work.
Yeah.
And so let's just say I started at maybe 6:30, but you and your brother got up at 5 a.m. So I had plenty of time there. So I'd get to work by probably 7:30, 7:45. Mm-hmm. And then I'd have to leave at 5, and then go pick him up and because daycare ended at 6.
Yeah.
So then I'd have to make dinner, and we weren't eating a lot of fancy home meals there, I can tell you that.
You guys were probably just tired all the time. And
mac and cheese.
Just whatever worked.
One time your dad said, probably after I had you, he goes, oh, I made you dinner. It's in the microwave, because we had the dog that I was always trying to eat the food. And I look in the microwave, and it was SpaghettiOs.
That was Coco too, right? The chocolate.
Yeah, Coco.
I remember her at the beginning of my life.
Yeah,
she was a good dog.
So your dad made me SpaghettiOs, which I hate, by the way. Hate.
I love SpaghettiOs.
They taste like the can.
I know. It's funny how things don't, like these big company things like that are still the same spaghetti.
Yeah.
Even 30 years later.
Yeah. So then, I'd get Brian ready for bed, and then I'd try to study.
Yeah.
I can remember sitting at my little kitchen table and falling asleep and sometimes crying because I was like, oh, how am I going to do this?
Mm-hmm. I think it's just one of those things I observe in my own life. The busier you get, the more you're like, you can do more. It's
you
just
get more efficient.
It's like Dad when he was working and he did the full Ironman. He's like, I don't know how I did it. Or you guys talking about residency. It's almost, how did I do that?
Yeah.
Because you're just so out of the rhythm of things. But if you started slowly building back up, humans were capable of such great things, and we're kind of pushing us. And obviously you guys had a passion for it.
Yeah.
A passion for what you do. And just like when you tell us stories, or my girlfriend Madison, about forensic pathology, and we'll get into that. You got some very cool stories.
Very cool stories.
There's lots of stuff. So to jump back into it, you guys finish up your residency. You come back to Toledo.
And I have you and Julie and Brian.
Yeah, you had us in Rochester, and then when we moved to Toledo, you had Christy. Then you and Dad are both working full-time. So what was it like once you started working full-time in Toledo?
I worked full-time before I got pregnant, because we came back in 99 and I didn't have her till 2001. And that was hard, but I did it. And and Dad will tell you this, I was the primary. I mean, I dropped off, I picked up. There was never any of Dad helping. Get out of there.
Yeah. No, I think
your dad never helped because he was never there, so he couldn't help.
Yeah.
This is kind of funny. One time I left the dog at the groomers, and it was also a boarding facility, and veterinarians was attached to it. And because I was at soccer or something out at Pacer with you probably, and all of you, of course. And I felt so horrible because I was like, I completely forgot the dog. So they just locked her up and kept her overnight, And never did that to you guys, so that was good.
Lucky, but also it's way crazier too. I mean, it was like just the beginning inklings of it, but there was no smartphones.
Oh God, no.
No, but like especially in the early days, just remembering everything, you had to write it down.
I had to write it down. I had a little book. I had this one kind. It was a Add a Day or Glance a Day or something like that, and I love that. I had multiple ones of that, but I searched the World Wide Web for the first time when in the basement of our house on Britannia. This is the first time. That's
pretty cool.
Yeah.
I know we take it for granted a lot because we're so ingrained in our lives. It feels so weird to leave the house without your phone.
Oh,
it feels
gosh. You're missing your arm or something.
People just used to do that all the time. You wouldn't hear from people.
So the first cell phones, when like Dad was on call and stuff. So when we were on call, we had these pagers that would. I'm trying to remember the very first ones. They would just come across. They'd beep beep beep, and they'd come across with a number. You didn't leave the hospital if you were on call. There was none of that. And then there came these big cell phones. They were like this big, and you couldn't take them out of the car. They were car phones.
Oh, the car phones.
Remember those?
I've seen those on
huge things.
Movies.
Because when Dad was his chief residency year, the last year, he could come home and stuff, and I had just had Julie, and I was trying to go to the grocery store. Can you imagine going to the grocery store with a 4-year-old maniac and you who could barely sit up in a cart, and then I have this infant so I had to put the infant in the front pack, tried to sit you up in the cart and have Brian sit up there next to you and strap you guys down because they just started making those carts where you could put 2 kids in them.
Okay, yeah.
Because, it was crazy times. So he went with me the first time after I had Julie, and we get in the parking lot. And he gets called away.
Oh,
so we had to drive 2 cars, So then I had to go in there all by myself. And, by the time you get diapers and pull-ups and formula or whatever, I breastfed everybody as long as I could. But by the time you get that, then there's no room for anything else in your cart.
Yeah, you got
just a few cans, SpaghettiOs, and some mac and cheese.
Yeah. But, so you guys, that was just obviously a wild time in your guys' life, but you got it done, and
it was fun though, in a way. You know what I mean?
I think there's just chapters of your life. It's just like when people look back at elementary school or high school or now college. It's just you almost think about it different chapters, and there's just different people and experiences involved, and it's easy to get very sentimental, but it's also beautiful in a way of just the different things going on.
I think back on those times and how much fun we actually had, but we didn't really do anything because we didn't have time to. Like one time we did a little wine tour around like within an hour of where, and I love dessert and coffee, right? And I couldn't get the dessert because he was falling asleep.
Yeah.
So we had to leave.
Yeah.
But there's so many times where he was sleeping.
Yeah, well, because you guys probably couldn't be the life of the party when you guys had to work so much. So.
No, but you hang out with the other residents,
Yeah, but it's just a different. I mean, that's a side of becoming a doctor other people don't see. You have to sacrifice a lot in the pursuit of different things. But I think having already established and starting the family, it kind of works out. You guys have each other in the family. You don't need all that other stuff.
And other people are starting their families too.
Yeah.
And your attendings and their wives are really, really cool too. They help kind of, but they're not. The women that I worked with, in a sense, weren't great role models. You want to know why?
Why?
Because they were like super women.
Uh-huh.
And you gotta try to put yourself up to that, and it's hard.
Yeah,
because it is really hard to be successful in such a driven field that requires so much of you, especially if you're married to someone who has an even more. Now, once I moved back here and worked in Toledo, a lot of the women that I worked with that were pathologists, they had husbands that stayed at home.
Oh, yeah.
And one of them was married to a lawyer.
Because in most relationships, if you're an MD, PhD pathologist, you're probably the one put on a pedestal. But it just so happens your husband's a neurosurgeon, which in pop culture, people put on a pedestal even more in a way. But so something I just thought of with these women that, you think are just almost like superwomen, do you think women, because of how medicine, especially back then, do you think you almost have to put on this outward facade, most people, to like look like you're perfect? Because it's not a man's not going to be judged in the same way.
For sure.
If he's not
definitely
quote unquote perfect.
The women were super women in many, many ways.
Yeah.
But you do have to kind of put on that persona. My best friend Cheryl, her dad was a 4-star general, and she was initially in the armed forces and went to medical school through there. Graduated like 1 or 2 in her class at Georgetown.
Yeah. So just
very, very driven,
ambitious.
But she was in a general surgery residency, which had to have been incredible. And she's incredible.
Yeah.
And she got pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there were some complications, or even if there weren't, that was the game changer.
Yeah.
Because they didn't accept that, because women are going to have to take some time off, and then somebody else has to bear that burden.
Yeah. No, it's not fair, but that is a huge thing. I mean, in sports, people will say that it's almost like an injury. If a woman gets injured in sports, she has to take multiple months off compared to other people. Or if you're trying to if you're a career woman, you have to take the time off. The male doesn't, and then they're going to slot someone else in who, quote unquote, who's more focused on work, as if work's the end all be all of life, which it's not.
I think it's a little more balanced today, but I will tell you that there were some of even my fellow residents that were guys, that were single guys. I can remember one of them. I can't think of his name, but I could see his face. And it was like, oh, we're just not as serious. Mm-hmm. Okay. And I still work 10, 15-hour days, but I'm not as serious as you because I have a kid.
Yeah.
And, he would complain because I'd put my breast milk in our residence refrigerator inside, like, multiple bags in a paper bag, and you couldn't even tell what it was, but it was like, oh, gross.
And you're just trying to balance everything. He's over here saying that when he's just a single guy.
And it was kind of funny. There's your lack of support. Sometimes from you'd think your fellow residents would support you, but.
And that's how all those things build up, where it makes it less and less likely. I feel like those are all things that play against you as a woman going into something like that. When you get extra barriers right there. That sounds like something, even just a small quip like that of, oh, you're putting your breast milk in the fridge.
You know that New York, I don't know if it was the first state to allow women to breastfeed in public. And it happened when I was doing it.
So I didn't even know that. So that was.
It used to be illegal, or you couldn't do it.
You couldn't even if
and where I initially had to, after I had Brian, I breastfed him, and I was going to try to feed him as long as possible. Do you know where I had to go to collect the milk during the day?
The bathroom? I
sat on a toilet in the bathroom.
Oh my God.
Until I found out, somebody told me that the OB/GYN residents had the pumping machines. I had like a manual machine. Mm-hmm. They had like machines, and you could do both at once.
Okay.
And that was so cool, because then you could go and do it, and because that
beats going and sitting on the toilet.
That half hour that I would be gone, I'd have to hide and make sure nobody knew I was doing anything. I'd have to sneak away to go to my OB appointments, because oh my God, 5:30 at night I might be getting away with something.
Yeah,
that's really how. I mean, it was like that. Cutthroat.
It's crazy.
Little cutthroat.
You have to fit it all in, because if you say, if you ask for that time off, then you're making yourself look weaker.
Yep, it is weak. Like, it's like you're not as serious or something.
Yeah, which is totally the wrong way to look at it.
No, it is.
It's good that things are I think there's still a long way to go with a lot of fields, but I mean, it's definitely trending in the right direction. Same with residency work hours. Still a long way to go.
Which was another thing that New York was on the leading edge of. And they changed, I'm almost certain that they changed the rules or whatever, at the time when we were in, because Dad had to start keeping track of his hours, because they were only supposed to work so many hours a week or whatever. And here's how they got away with not 1 week. He worked all the hours except for like 3. Mm-hmm. So that's insane. That's got to be illegal, right?
Yeah.
Well, the way they get away with it is we'd get 4 weeks of vacation a year, so they'd turn the hours in like every 3 months or something like that.
So they batch a bunch of weeks.
Kind of averaged them or something.
Yeah, they averaged.
I literally would keep track of his hours for him. And one time because he asked me to, because he was always so tired and busy. That was probably the first year when he was an intern. But one time he gave me his pager and said, can you please just take this pager for, a half an hour, so I could get some sleep, So he went and laid down in the call room, and I had it for probably half an hour,
Yeah.
And then the pages, he got a page or something.
I still think that's the residency hours, because they're always, they have these rules and they keep modifying them. But what it sounds like, there are always little loopholes around it. Because it's definitely an issue with how much residents work.
It is, and it's see one, do one, teach one was the rules back then, or that's what people would say. And it's almost like a badge of glory that you could, well, even when Dad was interviewing for residency, like a couple of the programs bragged about their divorce rate.
Well,
because of that, that means you're really working hard because you got a divorce during your residency.
Yeah.
So it's like, that's the cycle you need to break. Is this I suffered, so you must too.
Yeah, no, I think that's the whole weird thing about it is, so I've suffered, so you need to suffer. But we've now proven so much of how important sleep is. The whole sleep, I'll sleep and I'll die. Like Dr. Matthew Walker, he's led a ton of the research, and it's so insanely important. And Julie would be great to talk about that too. But that's my sister.
Yeah.
It is insane that it's still not shifting, where you can't just sacrifice sleep at your.
But we have to.
Yeah, no, you do have to.
Thing.
That's where stuff needs to change. And
because I think back on how little sleep we got. Like after we got to Toledo and I was trying to study for my boards, I would put all the kids to bed, because this was probably after I had Christy, or no, it was before I had Christy. So I'd put everybody to bed, and then I'd sleep until like midnight, 1 o'clock. So maybe I got 3 or 4 hours, and then I'd get up and study for 2 or 3 hours for my boards, and then I'd go back to sleep. Can you imagine
I know,
that? It's insane.
I just have, it's crazy to think about that. I mean, even kids, high school and college, that sit there and have to cram stuff in and all that, and then that's not even you cram stuff in, you do well on a test, but then do you remember it long term? No, because you didn't get sleep, so it doesn't.
Well, I can tell you, this isn't like memory. Oh, I partied all semester and then now I'm going to study.
No, you had
we would do this like all the time, and I mean, we did that kind of stuff too back in college, and then you did a little less of it when you got to med school, because you couldn't couldn't rely on your memory anymore and floating by. You had to. The studying we had to do, it was incredible.
Yeah, no, so your weeks were just really, obviously you guys took some weekend trips here and there, but you guys those years of your life were obviously very locked in. You didn't have a ton of free time of just going to do.
Oh, I hardly ever left. Once I was in the hospital, it's not like I went and got a Starbucks, or now you got Starbucks in the hospital, but I wasn't going to, I had regular coffee. We didn't have all those fancy drinks. Gosh darn it. Okay. Love those fancy drinks.
We have Big B here.
I love Big B.
Northwest Ohio and Southeast Michigan. I don't know where else it is, but it's
not national.
It's not national.
It's in Indiana a little bit too.
You love the Big B. You would always have those after school.
Teddy bear.
Yeah, the teddy bear.
I'd get the teddy bear before I went and picked the kids up from school. You need some sustenance in the afternoon.
So now that you kind of jump back. Yeah, no, we're jumping around. But now to go back, let's get into some of your, like, when you're a full-time forensic pathologist. Let's talk about like what you were doing more so, break that down for people, and let's hear some stories on that.
So I got my 4-year degree in natural science. I got a bachelor's in science with a degree in natural science. And then I went to Medical College of Ohio and did my graduate work and got my PhD in medical sciences with a specialty in anatomy.
Mm-hmm.
And then I decided to go to medical school. So I got my MD. And then I decided to do pathology, because anatomy is normal, study of normal, systems and development and anatomy, physiology, and then pathology is the study of the abnormal, disease. So it kind of went hand in hand, and pathology was anatomical and clinical, and anatomical is autopsies, cytology, and surgical pathology, and then clinical is like blood bank, chemistry, things like that. So it's fluids and stuff like that. So I did a combined program, and that was a 5-year program. And they wanted you to do like a internship year or clinical year, but they also had other ways you could fulfill that first year. And I was able to get credit for my PhD.
Yeah.
So I didn't do a clinical year. I went directly into pathology. So then I got that. Okay. Then after that, 4 years, I got my forensics fellowship for a year, and then I started working. And I moonlighted and worked and I moonlighted during my residency, but extra and a little bit before. But then I worked as a deputy medical examiner in Rochester, New York, for a while your dad was finishing residency, but I didn't officially work here. I tried to get in, but it just didn't work out.
Yeah. So when you were in Rochester, I had meant
a lot of stories there.
Yeah, when you were the deputy forensic pathologist, right?
Medical examiner.
Or deputy medical examiner. Sorry. Who? So let's tell people. I think so we used to watch CSI Miami when I was a kid. Yeah, we'd sit in the chair. And
that was our time together, which isn't that kind of funny?
And so we'd watch that, and I remember watching the scene. So it's Ducky in that one, right?
No, Ducky's in NCIS.
Oh, he's NCIS.
He's NCIS.
Well, who's the one in CSI Miami?
I can't remember. Sometimes there's a woman.
Yeah, I can't remember. That was so long ago that we watched that. I just remember Horatio.
Horatio was the investigator.
Yeah, but so for people that want to know, like medical examiner, forensic pathologist.
Okay.
Discuss that for the layman person who wouldn't know.
So we're digging here with terminology that I don't use anymore because I just don't think about my.
Well, just say.
No, I'm just going to tell you that. So, a medical examiner is a trained forensic pathologist that's usually hired, and I got to review this to get the terminology straight. There's coroners and medical examiners. Coroners are elected officials.
Okay.
Now in Ohio and Michigan, and I don't know which other states, the coroners happen to be or have to be physicians. They don't necessarily have to be forensic pathologists, but if they're not a forensic pathologist, then they're not going to do the autopsy. They're just going to sign off on the autopsy. So in Ohio, in Toledo, we have always had a forensic pathologist who's been our coroner. Mm-hmm. And Dr. Patrick happened to be my mentor many, many years ago, and an exceptional individual. And I think like Bowling Green has somebody who, for instance, maybe he's an internal medicine doctor, but there has to be a pathologist that actually does, a forensic pathologist that does the autopsy.
So there's some nuance there, and we would have to dig up some more again, like you said. But I get what you're saying. So there's more nuance there.
But let me tell you one other thing too. New York is such a big state. They have both medical examiners and coroners. So in the big cities, like I was in Rochester, we had medical examiners. And then all these surrounding counties, they have coroners because they're big, country areas and stuff. But they would contract with us and we would do their autopsies, which was pretty cool because we got to see some incredible stuff. Mm-hmm. Industrial accidents, farming accidents. There's the prison systems too that you will have an autopsy to do sometimes. But yeah, it was, we had a lot of drug activity that would come through Rochester too. So I saw a lot of that, and I had a lot of homicides.
Yeah. So that's what I was trying to get at. So that's a very nuanced medical examiner versus coroner, but just in general, what you would do for work, if there was a homicide or someone died, you would be there performing autopsies, trying to determine the cause of death. And you have some correct?
And by the way, there I am. I'm this 33-year-old woman who looks really young, and I'm little and I'm young and I'm female back in the time when we get pushed around a little bit. And legally, nobody can touch the body until the medical examiner gets there and says you can touch it.
Yeah.
And I can remember a few of the hardened detectives, like not liking that I was in charge of the scene.
Yeah.
And here I am as just freshly out of my fellowship and not really knowing what I'm doing. It was kind of
there's a chain of command. So you would show up to a crime scene and you had to say before you got there and could look at it. They
couldn't touch anything. They couldn't even get a wallet out of a pocket. One time somebody did. And two of the female investigators said something. One of them said something to me like, "Oh, I can't believe you let that cop or, that detective, like ride over you like that. And I said, first of all, he'd already done it. And
Mhm.
there really wasn't much I could do at that point. I suppose you could say he destroyed possibly, the crime scene or whatnot,
Yeah.
but he got identification and it was over.
Yeah.
So
That had to be pretty nerve-wracking. But so you were getting into that, and so you were in Rochester, and as you said, the deputy position. So let's go through what some of these stories. I mean, you've told me a ton of different ones.
I just thought of something too. Like they used to allow, I don't know if they do now, but at that point they always allowed cameras in the courtroom.
Yeah.
And they made a new law, and or people or something. What was it? I think it was cameras. They had cameras in there, and the news teams, know, and they made it a rule then. And I was there during that time where they couldn't have cameras in there. Remember people would make drawings and stuff.
Yeah, they stopped, like in courtrooms, stopped having
being
cameras.
able to have cameras in there. So they didn't do that anymore. But like here, it's so nerve wracking on knowing what to say and stuff. I had a case of a poor woman that she worked at like a convenience mart, and she opened. So she opened, and I don't know how it happened, but somebody found her, and I pronounced her dead. But I remember in the courtroom, it was a horrid scene. It turned out to be an ex-employee that came back and was robbing the store, and she caught him.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if he knew where to get the videotape that was in the office, so it had him on it. But it wasn't too hard. But he literally, she was like a grandmother, and he was a young guy, and he was just there to rob, and he shot half of her head off.
Yeah,
in her face.
Jeez.
And I'm in the courtroom testifying, and we're out of left field, and I said I had pronounced her dead, or they asked me if I pronounced her dead, and I don't know what I said. They asked me how I did it, or what did I do, or did I take her pulse or something, and I'm like, half of her head and her face were gone.
Mm-hmm.
And afterwards I felt horrible. But he caught me off guard,
Well, yeah, that's the whole thing you see in these courtroom scenes, cross-examining. They're trying to trip you up. Yeah, they want, because that's how our legal system, you can get off on any little technicality. But
it's ridiculous.
Obviously,
really.
There you knew you pronounced her dead.
Because I remember that I hadn't taken her pulse. Mm-hmm. So, in my head, I'm thinking, yeah, he's going to try to trip me up about this, Yeah. And
that wasn't quite necessary in that situation.
Not in that situation. It was ridiculous. So we had a really, one of the exciting cases was, I kind of give him little names sometimes. And I called him the closing time bandit. He was, we had the Syracuse FBI was there. And I had gotten this call. So he was escalating in his behavior and starting to get more violent. Like he'd come in at closing time and he'd rob a bank. And then he started coming in, he started using a gun. So they really had the FBI all over him. Yeah. And they got him and they caught him. And he was in a white van, and they found explosives and stuff in the back. And I guess he knew it was game over, because he was coming and he got caught in an alley or something. And they just shot him. Oh. And they kept shooting. Mm-hmm. And he ran into a brick wall or something. So I get called to the scene, and I'm actually trying to get pregnant for Brian. I had a miscarriage, and I'm a couple months within that couple, and I'm trying to get pregnant, which is kind of key in a sense. And I get into the van, and we used to wear these jogging suits. They matched. And they were just these, jogging suits from the 70s, 80s. And you could see people wearing those stupid headbands too. But he had on a blue polyester jogging suit. Yeah. And I'm in the van with him. He's in the driver's seat, and I'm like over here, and I'm starting to do my examination. And they had already had the bomb squad there and cleared it and cleared those explosives. I'm in the van, and I'm starting to unzip his jacket. And he's got explosives around his waist. Yeah. And I get out of the van, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this guy is, I don't know what the word was, he's got explosives around his waist, so they had to call the bomb squad back.
Yeah,
And
no one checked the body.
No, I mean, because I'm supposed to check it, I guess, but still, I would have imagined that they kind of do a precursory check, right? Oh my God, that was really scary. And
were you hyperventilating?
Well, you can imagine I was, but you got to act really cool.
Yeah,
you got to act cool. So I mean, it was, but I'm kind of like that. I mean, I could talk to anybody and I can BS with anybody, but your adrenaline gets going, But so that was a case where the guy had probably 70 gunshot wounds.
Oh, geez.
And it's a homicide. We can talk some other time about cause and manner.
Yeah,
it's a homicide, but it's legally not the way I would describe it, but I think the legal system calls that a justifiable homicide.
Yeah.
But you have to track each one of those gunshot wounds.
Yeah.
And you put you sometimes will put a probe in there so you can say entrance and how it's going up, down, which way, So can you imagine how long that autopsy took?
I know. I've seen, I mean, I don't know how accurate the shows always are. Cause you'll see them do that or blood spatter analysis and they'll do strings or probes you say. So how everything entered. So 70 bullets that you're trying to.
Yeah. We didn't, that would be a blood spatter would be an expert outside of me pretty much. But everything on TV is all this excitement all in 1 hour show where they do all this different technology, and a lot of cases are kind of routine, but that's a tough one. It's just time consuming. You have to, you do your autopsy the same every time. You start it the same. You go through the systems the same.
Standardize it.
So that you don't make errors. And I knew somebody that would go right in, and he was very experienced, but he would go right in and start with the gunshot wounds, and that's not the way I do things because I was young and I was still
you're doing things very much by the books.
Well, in the way you
you're learning,
and probably after 20-30 years I could have done that too. But
so, and we could talk so much about all of these different stories, and we will on another time, but I think so the next thing I want to jump in here is then you guys had moved to Toledo, obviously, and then you and Dad made the decision after Christy and just how everything with him working all the time that you were gonna retire to help to just raise us instead of us having us raised by daycare and
2 or 3 different nannies.
So
because I had to do daycare and I'd have to have a couple different babysitters for call, and Dad Christy had some health issues. And I had 4 kids that Brian had just turned 7, so I had 4 kids in the 7 and under. And Dad was going from 4 partners to 3, and he was the youngest one, so we knew he'd get the brunt of that extra. That's 25% more patients. We knew that he would get the brunt of that as the new guy or the newer guy that would have more room in his schedule. So we knew he was going to get much busier. And we didn't make that decision together. Your dad said that it was my decision. He didn't want to influence me. Because he didn't want to pressure me, and he never has, which is really pretty cool. He's always been supportive of me. And he tried to help in whatever way he could. He tried to help me make it work. But, I finally realized one day that I had the family that I had always wanted to have as a kid. I had a beautiful life. I had a beautiful family, and something was going to give. You can't maintain a high career, a marriage, and 4 children and not have something give. So I decided that I was going to put my family and my marriage first. And I retired.
I think I'm very grateful.
I feel like I had an epiphany. I really did, because I was always asking for some kind of sign so I wanted somebody to help me, and I'd pray. And I had a procedure, a myelogram after I had Christy, because I was having problems with my back and everything. And I got a post-myelogram headache. Despite the fact that your dad watched all of you and told me to go lay down with my head slightly elevated, because you stick the needle in, and then sometimes it doesn't seal, and you get a leakage, and then it causes a headache whenever you're sitting up. And I went back to work, and I had the post. It was hideous. It's not like blinding pain, but after, it's just insidious, and it's just constant, So, and I was starting to get headaches even after that all the time, wondering what the heck am I doing, and trying to balance it all, and leaving work at 6 o'clock and then having to go home and make dinner. And I had a nanny, a nice lady that babysat for me, but she didn't usually cook my dinner for me. So then I'd have to cook dinner,
Yeah.
and it was just too stressful, you know.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you that as soon as I made that decision fully in my head, my headaches went away.
Yeah.
It was like kind of weird. So
Yeah,
it was obviously
you got to listen to your body at times. But I mean, I think it's very admirable. I mean, there's always this thing of like, you got to work, work, work. But what's the point of working so much or accomplishing things or making money if you then have a terrible emotional well-being or family life? It's not worth it. Some people always, you'll see some people, there's these really rich or successful people, and then you see all the other stuff that's going on, and it's not, you can't really be envious of them.
two things. My mother was really, really upset with me. Oh my gosh, I can't believe you're going to quit working and throw away all that education, and you're not going to be a doctor anymore. And, da, 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 da. And then, I told her, I'm choosing my family.
Yeah.
And I loved what I did.
Yeah.
I was very passionate about what I did. I loved teaching. I loved getting up and doing tumor boards and I love talking about science and medicine. I loved it.
Yeah.
I loved it. But after Brian died, your brother, one of the first thoughts I had was, God had a plan.
Mm-hmm.
And I was home for all of you guys growing up, pretty much. And I didn't miss much with Brian, that's for sure. And I thank God for that every day.
Oh, and just like things work in mysterious ways, where those headaches, and at the time it felt right, and then I remember you talking about that before, of thank goodness you did, and you got to spend all that time with Brian before he left this earth.
Yeah.
So
it's funny because he was like 16 or 17, and I know what my kids will remember, what my husband will remember is my screaming all the time. He'd come home from work and shut windows because I was screaming and swearing, because I am, after all, the daughter of a truck driver.
mm-hmm.
And I told him that the windows had been open all day and everybody heard me, so it was okay. But here, I sometimes have these little mind blips. What I was going to say.
About Brian?
So my kids hear me screaming and swearing and, not being able to put two sentences together. And I must have picked him up from school, and he told me he heard me talking to somebody, and I was using all this big medical terms, and I sounded really intelligent, right? And he goes, "Wow," he goes, "you sound so different." And one time he said that I must have had ennui. Is that the proper word? The French word? Like having to give all that up.
I'm not sure.
And sit and raise children. It's hard.
Yeah.
It's a thankless job, and
yeah, definitely.
People think they don't know what you were capable of before.
Well, you obviously are, and I think people who truly know you know how smart you are. Because I think, just the average person, when they see dad, or even having friends and stuff, like, he's a neurosurgeon.
Yeah.
But you never, even just people who address him as doctor, but not realize to address you as doctor.
Yeah, but what's cute is a lot of your friends always, especially you and Brian's friends, they would call me Dr. Hoeflinger.
Yeah,
which is cute.
Yeah, it's just
not respectful,
that it matters, but it's just all the things like that, or in some way, like, as if you're not very highly intelligent, and
right?
Knowing all the medical stuff.
But that's what we women do, and some men. It's probably the toughest and the most important job you can do is raise a child.
Yeah,
because you do give up self, you give up any glory that you might have had working, and I don't have any regrets.
Well, it's also probably one of the most fulfilling things in the world.
Yeah, at the end of the day. I
think it's the first. I think having a kid, I mean, even having a pet, but I think about it as I get older, is having a kid's the first time, your own kid is the first time where you're putting someone truly before yourself. Where, you always hear of these stories of moms that can get superhuman strength to save their kid.
Yeah.
Or that they would take a bullet for their kid, because you've surpassed that level of ego where you care about yourself so much. And you can have a significant other, but people don't as much. It's really once you have a kid where that thing is the most important thing in your entire world.
And you're at that age where you're starting to come out of it a little bit, but that's your job from the time you get to self-awareness at like 12, 13, 14 years old, is to focus on you.
Yeah.
And you are very self-centered as a kid, not you personally, but children and young adults that's what you're supposed to be doing, is focusing on you, getting your career started, figuring out what you want to do with your life, and making meaningful relationships. But it's all about you.
Yeah.
What do you want to do tonight? Where do you want to eat? What do you want to do for working out? And then you maybe you meet someone or your friends, and you learn, let's compromise, and let's do what they want to do.
The world doesn't revolve around me.
But I'm telling you what a shock it is when you have a child. And that's what I'm saying. Like when I forgot the dog.
Yeah.
I mean, you have somebody that you are responsible for 24/7.
I know it's
scary.
That's why I don't think no matter what, especially anyone who has a first child, you can read as many books as you want, or watch movies, or have someone else tell you about it. Until you experience it, I don't think anyone could truly understand it, right?
No. And you know what? You have Instacart and home delivery and DoorDash and all that. We didn't have that. So like, let's say I didn't have something and I needed it for dinner. I'm making spaghetti and I don't have the spaghetti sauce, or I don't have tomatoes or sauce or whatever, and I got to go to the grocery store. How easy is it for you to jump in your car and run over to the grocery store? Super easy, right?
Yeah.
Well, how easy is it then when you got this kid and you got to put them, and they're heavy because you're a girl and you're not as strong, and you got to put them in the car seat, and then you got to, drag the car seat in because you don't have all those fancy carts either. Yeah. And, then you get, it's like an ordeal. Or what if he's hungry and he wants his dinner first? And now it's like 7:30 and it's like, well, forget dinner. Yeah. I know. What do I need dinner for?
I don't think you've seen it yet. Have you seen the new Barbie movie
yet? No.
So Madison, my girlfriend, and I saw that last night, but actually it was very different than what I was expecting. And it talks about that, of just how I thought the director did very good, in Margot Robbie and Ryan Gosling. But I don't know who this other female actor is, or actress. It's this part where just talking about just being a woman, just balancing everything. It's a full-time job being a mother.
At it.
And it's full-time job being a woman in our society. And so I think
you're supposed to be this is the Barbie thing. You're supposed to be a sex symbol, and you're supposed to be hot and sexy for all your friends and your husband and everybody else. And then you've got to play this role where your kid's vomiting on you and they got diarrhea and oh my gosh.
Well, not that it says something like that in the movie versus
and cook.
But you can't be like too perfect where like that, or too hot where then you have other people
jealous of you,
looking at you, other guys, and then their girls being mad at you for being too
hot. Yeah.
So no, there is so much stuff. And I think going back to what you're saying about it is a very thankless job being a parent, of just how much sacrifice you make. And until a kid becomes older, until they're much more mature.
That's called delayed gratification, something that I don't think people know anything about anymore.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, just like you said, in the world of Instacart or Uber Eats.
Oh my gosh. And you know what? It was so cool when they started making those drive-through windows for the pharmacy.
Oh, yeah.
You guys would have strep throat and ear infections, and I'd have, try to drag 3 or 4 kids in there. Try to drag them I used to have to take all of you to the pediatrician.
Yeah.
And I can tell you, I can remember banging my head against the wall sometimes, literally just going, oh, help me, please help me.
Yeah.
Because Brian would be climbing all like a monkey, and probably you were too. And you were so fat you couldn't walk until you were 15 months old. So then you'd be trying to stand up, and then I'm pregnant with Julie, and you're hitting your chin on the coffee tables and getting mad if somebody tried to help you. And it was crazy.
And
then you started running, all of you, running out the door, running down the street. And not always, but it happened a couple times.
Yeah, but I was active little kid.
You guys were so active. Little monkeys.
And we kept you young.
Well, and I put you guys in cross country and every sport that I could as soon as I could, because I thought that it would wear you out. But you know what happens with that, right?
Makes you more.
It makes you you have more energy and stamina. But you guys were always busy and happy.
What was I gonna say? Well, there's that, and I mean, I just remember, how you got us to all of our practices, like when we were in soccer and cross country, and you just had to drive us. You were just stereotypical like mom van, the
Mom
minivan.
taxi.
Yeah, the minivan.
You know
Just
what was
driving
the
everyone
worst?
around.
Probably was when you were a senior and Julie was a junior, and Christy was a freshman, and trying to make sure I made it to every event because Christy would golf in the fall.
Yeah.
Julie was in cheerleading. She played basketball and she
played tennis.
She played tennis and she played, was it field hockey or
lacrosse?
Field hockey.
Oh,
she played 3 sports her freshman year.
Yeah.
Or no, wait. She did. Well, she tried to do that in the spring. She did dance, cheerleading, and played basketball.
Mm-hmm.
And she did it.
Yeah.
And maintained her grades. She tried to do field hockey and tennis, and the field hockey coach thankfully made her choose.
Yeah, no, sometimes it's too hard to balance.
But I'd go drop
everything.
Christy off over a half an hour away at her golf, and you'd have soccer, and I would try to make it to everything, and I'd only make like half of everything, but at least I made it.
I think you did a good. I think you had a lot of things.
Yeah, and then we'd have to come home and make dinner.
Yeah, it always comes back to coming home and making dinner.
Yeah,
well, I get how people all the time. It's so much easier to just go pick up fast food, and how our world
hated that.
I know how the world is geared. That I mean, it's such an issue, especially in America. It's just all the fast foods are out there. It's almost cheaper to do that
and easier.
It's so much easier. It's when you're tired and
well, you do that sometimes, but
you want to pick it up. It's easy. It takes a lot more effort. It's not even that the meals are what they are. It's just you have to go get the stuff. You have to prepare it, make it,
chop it.
Yeah.
So I would try to do, get dinner prepared ahead of time. And I did have a really cool thing in this house that I absolutely loved when you guys were younger was the warming drawer.
The warming drawer.
Yeah, because you guys were coming in at different times, and
the warming drawer
that helped. Nice. Yeah, that was good. And there are some women that are super good. There was somebody when I was in residency. She worked in the lab, and she shopped once a month, and she had all this stuff prepared. And
I don't get those people.
Pot.
I know that are so good at meal prepping. I always need to because I have to consume a lot of calories when I'm like training for an Ironman right now. I don't love to eat. So you have to really you have to meal prep, and I've never been an expert at meal prepping because you have to label everything and keep track and do it all. Never feel like doing it.
And then you don't like to eat it, then you don't want to eat it. But it does help then for you to have the meals, and it gives you the calories and the protein that you need.
Definitely, yeah.
I've done it before, but I used to be more efficient when I was younger and I had more to do.
Yeah.
But yeah, you just have to find that balance and try to do the best. And you can't beat yourself up.
Yeah.
That's one thing I guess I've probably learned is I used to be so intense, and I'd beat myself up if I didn't do everything perfectly. And you got to have some grace. I've gained some grace about that, about not beating myself.
Yeah.
And I gained that after Brian died, I think a lot. That comes with age too. But there were days when I'd be so depressed or upset or just grieving. And sometimes I would just go in his room and cry.
Yeah.
And that day I didn't get anything done. Because when you're that emotionally spent, you're not doing anything.
Well, sometimes that's the biggest win right there is just getting through the day.
Yeah, that's a big feat in and of itself.
I mean, I know that. I mean, we all have this negative self-talk, and I always think about it like this. I've read and heard before. I think it's a great way of thinking it. You would never talk to your best friends like that. You would never talk to a loved one.
Yeah.
But you'll talk to yourself in such a like, you didn't do anything today. You're so lazy.
Yeah.
It's all this negative. But I definitely, after Brian first died, I think one thing with us is we were busy with stuff. Dad was really busy with work still. And it's hard for all of us. But yeah, with you, the more you can stay busy on stuff, it's good. But the more when you just have to sit there and think through it, you lost your oldest son. You have to think. Yeah, it's
in the beginning terrible. It was grief and it was shock, and you guys were super busy and you were kids, so it didn't hit you quite the same, I think, and you were able to keep yourself busy with school. And then I don't know, I think the first year is a shock year.
Yeah.
And then the second year it hits you like a ton of bricks.
I don't think anyone's equipped, especially kids. you just avoid your emotions.
I think you guys could put it aside for years.
Well, I think, yeah, no, that's
right?
what I'm saying. I think you avoid your emotions a lot more. You don't know how to be in touch with your feelings as 15, 13, and 11-year-olds.
You got enough other stuff to worry about.
Yeah, so I mean, just like you see when people like high schoolers start lashing out at their parents, you just don't. There's all this stuff you don't know how to deal with when you're younger, emotion wise. So you're learning all that, and then I don't think anyone of any age is ever equipped to lose someone that close to them, or even losing a parent when you're younger.
I can't imagine.
Like if you're 25, dad lost his mom. That's tough. It's just all unique in a different way. Pain is pain, and it's all relative. I always think about so.
But I feel like you guys were able to really continue on. I mean, look at you all. You all graduated magna cum laude, got accepted into very good schools, did very well in college. I couldn't have done that. My brother got in a really bad car accident, and I had transferred to UT for a semester in my junior year. And the shock of going from, well, I didn't know it at the time, but there were 3 kids in my organic, and I was one of the 3. Second semester, first semester, I did organic at UT, and there were 300 people in the class.
Yeah.
And, I was worried about my brother because my brother told me he was going to keep drinking until he got the job done. He was 3 years older than me. And I got a C in organic. I mean, I had a 4 the whole time I was at
Yeah,
Siena.
you obviously are very intelligent.
But I mean, I did well, and I had a 4 and I worked 20 some hours a week the whole time. And my brother is trying to kill himself, and I almost flunked out of school. That semester was horrid.
Yeah.
And I then transferred back. But your dad, his mother was dying when we were in med school, and he was studying for his boards. You can't say what you would or would not have done, because maybe that was a good distraction. He'd go in her room and sit with her.
Yeah. I think I don't know, there's always people like they'll say to you or to me, like for me personally, all the people like, you're so strong, how did you do it? Or your family's so strong. I hate that in a way.
Yeah.
I write about it. We didn't choose to be strong. I wish I didn't have to be strong. And I don't think about it as strength. Humans are a lot more resilient than what you think. And there's no strong, or it's not like a movie where you're Rocky and you get to the top of a mountain or something, or the top of the stairs and you're celebrating. It's an absolute, like you said, it's just a grind, and you don't think about being strong. You think about, I just got through another day. Even if I cry,
you have to get through, because you have to get through for your family and your friends, and because that Brian didn't do it on purpose, and that he would hate for us to have been suffering, and that you got to be strong and positive for him, because that's what he was.
Yeah, no, he was such an embodiment of positivity. That's why it's
that
so
we
hard.
Didn't even realize until after because he had his negative parts, and then you look afterwards and you're like, wow, how did I not see this?
Yeah. Well, I mean, he definitely was always, I think, a very kind person. He obviously had issues too. Like, we would joke or we would fight.
Oh, gosh.
But shit. Yeah, but after all of that, you remember the good things. And he did have, there's such an inner working on each person that you never know, even if you're so close to them. Like all these internal writings, personal writings.
Yeah. I think that was God in him knowing, and that I'm religious, and I know some people aren't, and you can call it a light, a force, an energy. I call it God, that was in him, and that maybe expressed itself because of what his fate was going to be. And it's like a gift that we were given, that we could see, especially afterwards.
Yeah.
It was a gift.
Yeah.
To be able to see that side of him. But people would come and tell me things, and I'm sure they told you things of kind things that he had done for them, or but it's almost like, because he was going to leave, we got to see that side of him, because we didn't get to see the rest of it. Mm-hmm. Is how, I don't know. I got lots of stories and lots of really freaky things, in a sense, that only solidified that belief in me.
Yeah. And I think just in this world, it's so hard to we're not equipped to deal with that as humans. It's
No.
just it's so, it doesn't make any sense. Why does that happen?
But you know what I also think too? I think that we were given this amazing ability to be able to feel intense and horrid grief and still have love and hope in our hearts.
Yeah.
It's how we can carry both. We can carry immense pain and then these other feelings.
Yeah,
and it's kind of weird, isn't
it? It's
it?
a very Taoist thought of, if you think about the yin and yang, there's the small bit of white in the black. It's the light and the darkness, and there's the small bit of black and the white, which is the darkness and the light. You can't have one without the other. You can't have, you can't have great joy and happiness without great sorrow.
Because don't you
They
think
define
that
one
having
another.
had the great sorrow, you tend to appreciate certain things more, and you
Yeah.
feel a more intense emotion about
Yeah.
certain things and a gratefulness, and you forget, because that's our human nature. You forget how lucky you are for all these gifts that you're given.
I think over the last 10 years, I mean, I would say and now I'm 25, but even 16, 17, 18, I think I had a much more appreciation of life. Even just waking up and gratitude of just waking up, the simple joys of life. And there's these small things where some people, I think that if you don't lose someone like that, or you kind of just get stuck in your own little world where I want this, or I want to do this, where sometimes just the little joys of getting to hang out with your family, or just going and walking in nature,
we don't get that pleasure always. We should do a podcast on this, because some of the things that Brian wrote in his journal that he kept while he went to that junior retreat,
Kairos,
yeah, I mean, it's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
The things he said, and like, what's your favorite time of the day, when he would get to go work out. Mm-hmm. He just said some things. What are you most afraid of? Dying alone in a car accident.
I don't know, they're just freaky things.
Things.
And then what about the thing of Christy that
Christy wrote something, and I showed it to your dad, and he goes, "Oh yeah, well, so what? It's a creative writing." In 6th grade,
she wrote
about Brian dying, and I said, she wrote this 6 months before he died.
Yeah. Well, and she talked about him hitting the tree and going away, right?
Yeah. And then it was a creative writing project, and it was from September, and he died in February.
Well, and his patron saint,
yes.
What was Saint Francis, and what's he the patron saint of?
I had to look. Well, he's patron saint of peace. That's what we know him most for: peace and animals.
Yeah.
2 things that Brian really stood for.
Well, no, but
also, fire.
Yeah, dying alone in like fire, isn't
well,
it?
he's because I think he died in a fire, but Brian was wearing that necklace, and I felt like that protected him.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's just so many coincidences. It's always
and they got him out before he could burn.
Yeah, they got him out with the jaws of life.
We need to talk about that. A lot more about him, because there's some really cool things. Mm-hmm. But I feel like I feel like God gave us the ability to feel great, intense pain, but great love at the same time.
Yeah.
And that's what gets you through, if you can somehow channel that, because some people, they can't. They can only, in the beginning, I wanted to die.
Yeah.
And
I think yeah.
Well, but I was thinking about ways to do it. Mm-hmm. And ways that would work.
Yeah.
Like crashing into a wall going, like on the expressway,
but how, I mean,
you didn't tell anybody that because it's scary. Yeah,
but I think about it like that, but how serious do you think you were? Because I think about that like ideation, but I always thought there's no way I could, because it's not fair to everyone else.
Well, you want to know what I said when I finally said something to your dad about it? And that had to have been right in the beginning. I was afraid to say anything in the beginning. Right in the when I start having the thoughts, because you got to step back here and realize that I saw suicide all the time.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I have strong feelings about things. And one of the things I used to think about suicide was that it was a coward's way out. Mm-hmm. Because what you do is you kill yourself and you leave all these people behind grieving you. And it's horrid, right?
Yeah.
Like I had a guy that had a drug problem, and it was Christmas time, and he had a wife or a girlfriend and a couple of kids. And he took, I don't know if he spent the Christmas money. Well, that might have been something else. But he killed himself in the bedroom where all the Christmas presents for the kids were.
Yeah.
And blew his head off. And that's a bloody mess.
Yeah.
And all I could think of, and I had to see this scene, which is fine because I was the medical examiner, not the loved one. But all I could think about was, wow, what a coward's way out, right?
Yeah.
That he killed himself. Well, then my son died. And I realized that for somebody to do that to themselves, they must be in such intense emotional and physical pain
Yeah.
to have to take your life, that I finally understood why somebody commits suicide. It's not necessarily a selfish act.
It's easy to always say when you're in a different headspace because there's mental illness,
When you don't know.
and there's all this other stuff because it's sometimes you just need to get to the next day. There's just moments where you can just feel so low where everything feels
just negative,
and it just feels hopeless. Like it feels like what's the point of stuff at times. But I think it's very powerful to. I think it's always whenever you guys share. I know whenever I've shared in my personal life, it's very powerful to other people to hear that everyone struggles.
Oh, I think they need to hear.
Yeah.
And I think that's why Dad resonated with people in the beginning when he would write stuff on Facebook, because he has such an eloquent way of, in a simple way, but, without using big words and, or without making it sound crass. He's just very eloquent with sharing his pain.
Mm-hmm.
And in a
just
human
make it, you
way.
have to, I mean, that's so much of art, whether it be painting or writing, is it moves you, it creates emotion in you,
Right?
And that's what it is it's trying to relay to someone how it feels when that's happened to you,
and then they can say, wow, and I've felt that too.
Yeah.
I'm not alone. And that's the problem with our society, is we've got the Instagram with the perfect figures and the perfect faces and the lack of wrinkles, and we're perfect lives, and you know what, we're not perfect.
Yeah. I mean,
we don't have perfect,
like we've been talking about. I mean, that's what
we're not strong.
We're perfectly imperfect. We're perfectly imperfect. That's what makes things good. If everything's perfect all the time, like what really is life?
And you know what I decided was, first of all, I had 3 other kids. That's what I said to Dad. He said, yeah, but you wouldn't act out on because of the kids, you have and you know what I said? And this is a horrible thing to say, but you got to understand the depths of the despair, which I know you do. I said, I that's the thing, Brian. I hurt so bad that I don't care about anybody else. I just want the pain to go away.
Yeah.
I just want it to go away. And then, time slowly starts easing it a little bit. And we're 10 years out, and it's great, isn't it? We're all doing great. And tell me how far away you are from going down the rabbit hole of hurting really bad. Because what you do is you put the brakes on it. You don't let yourself go there. You don't let yourself feel it, because you've already felt it a million times and it never changed anything.
Yeah.
I've examined his death from every angle that I could, and it never changes the outcome. So once I felt like I had examined everything to the depths that I needed to, I try not to let myself go down there, because I don't need to cry about it. You need to deal with it, but I don't want to dwell in it. Do you see the?
No, I know. I agree, because the more you do, you have to in a way you have to let go of someone.
You have to let go.
Because if you sit there and think about them truly every day, you just suck yourself down into a vortex.
And we're going to be here, and I figure I'm going to be here for quite a long time, because the ornery people stick around. They stick around. I think they stick around a lot. So I figure I'm here a long time, and do I want to make everybody, including myself, miserable for the rest of my days? Or can I maybe be once in a while a little bit, because I know I'm not always positive, and I'm not always a light, and I'm sometimes a Debbie Downer, but I want to try to be as uplifting as I can. And that is something that you almost have to remind yourself of.
Yeah.
To do.
A lot of things are.
Because we forget, and then we start complaining about things, and
it's easy to. You constantly have to remind yourself to take a breath, take a step back, and say, okay, I've just gone down this. It's easy to go down that
path.
Because I think with Brian's death too, like all the negativity and all the emotion, a lot of positivities come out of it. But I think about it so much when I think through it and I write through stuff, is there's certain moments in life and certain experiences in life that can either be your path to destruction or they can be your path to greatness. So they're very, there's two paths you can take out of something like that. You can sit there and say, life is shit. I got dealt shitty cards. My brother died. This happened, that happened. And I'm not going to do anything about it. And you can start getting the drugs, alcohol, or other things.
Chip on your shoulder.
Yeah. And you can just live your entire life in self-destruct, or you can take that, and I think we have, is in trying to create positive examples. I try to be a little bit nicer to someone because you remember hearing, because that so many strangers came up about your brother and thought, this kid just held the door open. It matters to people.
It does matter.
It matters to people when you're nice to them. And
you smile at somebody, and maybe that's just what they need that at that moment in time, is somebody be kind.
Well, and that's what I can never get that thought out of my head of when you're in these terrible negative spaces. You never know if I decide to be mean to that person might go home and say, that was the last straw. All these people hate me, blah, blah, blah. But what if on the reverse flip side of that, if every situation you say, hey, how can I make this person's day better? How can I bring a little bit of light into it? And of course, we're not perfect. But if you can try to think that in other people's perspective, people aren't trying to think in traffic. A lot of people can use that one.
Don't get me into traffic. But I have a little road rage.
I always think about if someone I always try to give people the benefit of the doubt of they don't mean to, or maybe they're in a big rush. Maybe they have something very important. I don't know. I think if we all just tried to have a little more empathy for each other
and kindness,
we're more alike than we are different. The world would want to make you, if you just go on stuff, everything's so divisive. But if you actually talk to people, I think there's a lot more shared humanity amongst people.
That's what I found out when your brother died. Just the outpouring of love and support from people, especially after Dad started writing, near and far, and because it's a shared fear of all parents is to lose a child. And it doesn't matter how. At the end of the day, does it really matter? We were blessed with a gift that he didn't hurt anybody.
Yeah.
But
loss, at the end of the day, I agree. Loss is loss. It doesn't make it. I don't even think that makes it better if that he was doing anything else and he got killed. Someone's dead.
Well, he was a good kid that made a bad decision, and so are a lot of people, and sometimes we make stupid decisions, but we've all made stupid decisions at times.
We're all human.
We're human. And that's where the grace needs to come in with the forgiveness and everything. But we're all trying most of the time to do our best.
Yeah.
So it's, yeah.
But I think
it got a little dark there. No, but I think it's real,
I think it's very real. I mean, and that's what Brian Matters, our organization, is all about. That's why we spread advocacy. That's why we do what we do. And I think we discussed a lot. We'll definitely have to. There's still so much more we're going to dive into. Me, you, Dad, and Julie, potentially, and Christy.
Yeah.
Over the next many episodes. So I think that's a good episode for now. And
that was a long one.
Yeah, but
and we didn't even touch on so much. Yeah.
But we can always we can dive into a lot more stuff. I think that's a good spot to end it for now. And thank you guys for listening. It means a lot. If you enjoyed it, please let us know on the social medias, the comments, and leave us a review, leave us a rating on the
let
podcast.
Us know any suggestions, positive suggestions, or for maybe making it better, or things we should not talk about, or things you'd like to hear more of.
Yeah. But all right, Mom.
Thanks, Kevin.
Bye.
Thanks.